Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Keene Public Library. I want to thank the library for asking the Keene Amateur Astronomers to come tonight and present on the solar eclipses that are coming up. I'm Susan Rolke. I'm part of the Keene Amateur Astronomers, and I'm a local science teacher. So we have a couple of different types of eclipses that are coming up. It's pretty exciting. On October 14th, there will be an annular eclipse in southwest part of the United States. And it's also known as a ring of fire because there's always going to be a ring of the sun that's visible, as we can see here. And on April 8th of this coming year, we're going to have a total eclipse. So I'm going to talk about where we need to go in order to experience these. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how they occur. Right, so I thought it was pretty appropriate to start out with a picture of the Earth and the Moon, and from a little bit of a different perspective. This is from the Apollo 8 mission, and it's the first picture of the Earth rising above the Moon's surface. So this was taken back in 1968. But it doesn't put anything into perspective for us, like how big is the Moon compared to the Earth? I don't think we get a good perception of this looking at our textbooks or looking online to see pictures of the Earth and the Moon. So let's imagine for a moment that the Earth is the size of a basketball. Any ideas how big the Moon would be? I have two great individuals I see in the fourth row. What do you think? Want to just hold up your hands? What do you think? If the Earth is about this big, ooh, that's a pretty good estimate. Oh, I like that. Yeah, really, really close. It's about the size of a tennis ball. So pretty neat. So I have a picture here. Sort of gives us a this actually was a picture taken by a satellite in the Earth. It was being photographed, and the Moon came along and sort of photobombed the picture. So it's pretty nice, pretty cool. And as we see, the Moon doesn't look super reflective. Kind of neat. All right, so now we've got a good idea of how big the Earth and the Moon are related to each other. So let's keep thinking of the Earth's about the size of a basketball. Where in this room, how far away should I put that tennis ball that represents the Moon? So if I'm here and I'm the Earth, how far away should I put that Moon? What do you think? Back there? About 3 feet? Is that what you're saying? Okay, so I got two different answers. I got 3 feet, I got way back there. So about 23.5 feet. So about one side of this room to the other side. Kind of cool. All right. And a lot of times we don't get that good perspective because we see pictures like this in our textbook or online. We see the sun in the middle, and then we see the Earth, that gray dot, and then we've got this little black ring around our Earth to represent our Moon. And then suddenly everything is absolutely out of scale to us. Okay, so we kind of have this warped sense of how far away things are and how big they are. Another thing to think about, okay, is before we jump off, let's go back to this one for a moment. How many fingers do you think you need to hold up at arm's length to block out the Moon in the night sky? I'm very curious. Yes. Hi. Did you have an idea? It says 4. 4. Okay. So I hear 2. Actually, The moon is a half a degree across. So a circle is 360 degrees. The moon is a half a degree across, and it's about half a finger at arm's length. Kind of neat. So you can definitely go outside at night, maybe on the way home. It's not quite full anymore, but you can put your finger up and block out the moon. This other part, I don't want you to do that. Okay. The sun is the same, looks to be the same size in the sky. The finger. Don't look at it though. Okay, don't do that. But you'll get solar eclipse glasses maybe later in the year from the library, and then you can do that. Okay. All right. So the reason why we get these wonderful solar eclipses is because the moon and the sun appear to be almost the same exact size in the sky from the Earth. It's the only planet in our solar system where we have this happening of our moon and our sun look like they're the same size. There's no place else you can go in the solar system to see an eclipse. This is it. We're the big show. Fun fact, this is a crazy fact. It's not really related to eclipses, but I love to throw this one out. It really kind of messes with my students' minds, so I really apologize. So I'm going to skip this head to slide 6. All right. So as the Earth goes around the sun, we all know that the moon is going around the Earth, but the Earth is moving. We are the only moon in the solar system that does not move its planet. Okay. From our perspective, it looks like the moon comes up, goes across the sky, and sets. It looks like it's going around the Earth, but when you map its journey around the sun and the journey of the Earth around the sun, you see that they weave together. So here we've got on the screen, we've got a blue line with a couple of blue dots, that's the Earth. When we see the black line and the black dots is our moon. It kind of arcs around the path of the Earth. They actually both orbit a point that's about 3/4 of the way to the Earth's surface from its center. They both orbit about that point together as they move about the sun. So that's kind of cool. Fun fact, the students get really upset about that. And again, this is totally unique to the Earth and our moon. Going back though to talking about eclipses. You gotta be careful. None of these pictures are really to scale, but this tells us how everything needs to line up in order to have an eclipse. We get an eclipse when the moon passes between us and the sun. Because they both appear to be the same size in the sky, the moon blocks out the sun and we get the eclipse. That brings us to a really great question though. Why don't we get an eclipse every month? Okay, if the moon is traveling with the Earth, shouldn't it end up between us and the sun at least once every month? Well, it doesn't quite manage to block out the sun. And the reason why is if we look at the sun, if we look at where the Earth is, the moon doesn't lie in a straight line between us and the sun. Its orbit is tilted. So if I had a table and had the sun on the table and had the Earth on the table, the moon would be going up and down from the table, heading into it at a 5-degree angle. So sometimes when it's between us and the moon, it's too high. So, I'm sorry. Sometimes when the moon is between us and the sun, it's too high. And sometimes it's too low. I've got a picture of that coming up. So as we move around the sun together with the moon, depending on where we're at these pictures here, these square rectangles are supposed to, the blue is supposed to be up above the plane of the Earth and the sun, and the dark blue is below the plane of the Earth and the sun. So there's 2 points on here where the moon is going to pass between us and the sun, and that happens about 6 months apart. So here, okay, we have the moon is between us and the sun, and we'll get a solar eclipse. If instead the moon is over here, we get a lunar eclipse. Same situation up here. So we get these eclipses about 6 months apart, which, if you think about it, we've got one coming up in October, and April's about 6 months later when we have our next eclipse. To line up to think about getting pictures of, if we have the sun is off to our left. Here, if we were to visualize, the moon would be going in its orbit around the Earth. Again, at that 5-degree angle, we can see on the top that the moon's too high and the shadow misses us. Or at another point in our orbit around the sun, the moon is too low, and again, the shadow misses us. So twice a year, we manage to hit this sweet spot, 6 months apart, where the sun, again, over here, off to our left, where the moon shadow lands on the Earth. And what makes this rare is 70% of the Earth is covered by ocean. So for this to manage to hit landfall where we are, doesn't happen very often. Okay. We also have the moon changes in its orbit just a little bit. Sometimes the moon is closer to us, and sometimes the moon is further away. Has everybody heard about the supermoon that we just had? Right, so the moon was closer to us, so the moon was bigger. Right, at other times, the moon's going to get a little bit further away. And as I mentioned, we live at a really unique point in time because of these small changes in where the Earth and moon are in relationship to each other. When the moon is further away, it completely blocks out the sun. Yeah, I said that wrong, didn't I? I'm sorry. When the moon is further away, it's smaller. I apologize. So it's further away, it's smaller. It's this one over here on our right. And it doesn't completely block out our sun. We get what's called an annular eclipse or a ring of fire. So in October, the moon is going to be further away. Okay, so it's going to look smaller in our sky, and that little bit of change making it smaller is going to result in not completely covering the sun. It will always have this little bit of a ring around it. And if you happen to be in the right place in the United States, you'll see this occur. So let's look at where we would need to be for this. All right, so NASA released this amazing map, and I do have resources in my bag. I'll have that so that you can look at these resources later. So the map here shows both eclipses. We have the October eclipse, starts in Oregon, here on the left, and it goes down through Texas. And we also have on this map the April eclipse, our total eclipse, which starts down in Texas, actually in Mexico, sort of more of the blue-gray line here, and it cuts up through the northern eastern part, all the way up to New York State, part of Vermont, top of New Hampshire, and Maine. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how to read these maps. In order to see the total annular, in order to see the annular eclipse, you need to find a place that's within this gray path. This gray path is the path that the shadow of the moon is going to take across the Earth. So in order to experience that ring of fire of seeing the sun, okay, eclipsed by the moon with just a little bit of it peeking out, you need to be somewhere in the United States in this gray path. So, and then there's also times it's showing us. So up here in Oregon, up here, we see the time 9:20. So that's about the time of day, it's going to be in the morning, that this will occur in Oregon. And as you look, the times start getting later and later in the day until we get down to Texas. And it's occurring at about, what, 11:45 as it enters Texas, 11:50. And so it's racing across the United States because the moon and the earth are both moving. So they'll see it at different times. So outside of that, we're only going to see a partial eclipse. Okay, so I zoomed in a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. There's one other thing that they show us on this map is they have times. So between the circle between 9:25 and 10:30, we have some times here. So the closer you are to the center of the path, a gray band, the longer it's going to last. So the clarity is not really great, but it's about 4.5 at the center here. And then 4 minutes, 3 minutes. And it continues to decrease as we get closer and closer to the edges. Okay, until you're outside of this path and you won't see it totally. All right, I'm going to come back to an annular eclipse in a few moments. So eventually, 1 billion years in the future, all of the solar eclipses that happen are going to be annular because every year our moon gets a little bit further and further and further away from us. About how far it gets is about how fast or how much your fingernails grow in a year. So just a little bit, a couple centimeters each year. It's going to get further and further away. So eventually, the moon, as it appears in the sky, won't be big enough to fully cover the sun. So we live at a special time. All right, a total eclipse. So pretty excited. We're going to have a total eclipse April 8th. And it's going to start in Texas, actually Mexico, and go all the way to Maine. Here we have our map. Right. So we're looking at the grayish bluish line on the right-hand side, 2024. I do have resources, like I said, where you can go and you can pull up this map and you can get higher and higher quality that you want to download if you wish to look at this. So I'm going to bring us into Texas. Originally, I thought I wanted to go to Texas to see this. Okay, again, we want to be somewhere within this gray shadow band here. This is where the moon's shadow is going to be, right through here. So if you're anywhere outside of that band, you will not see a total eclipse. Moon is not going to cover the sun, the total. Special things happen when the moon totally covers the sun. This is where it almost isn't quite the same. Okay, they're totally different things. But April, the weather's a little. So I think the biggest issue we're going to encounter in April is finding a good place to see it with nice weather. We're just not going to know until we're close. So this past year, it was storming in Texas and it was sunny in Vermont. It's normally it's cloudy in Vermont, sunny in Texas. So who knows? All right, so, but I think most of us are probably aiming for somewhere near home. So what does that look like? So we've got Buffalo is pretty close to the center line. That's going to experience the longest period of totality. If we can get to the center here. I'm heading towards the shores of Ontario, sort of near Watertown. And she'll be in this general area. And then we have Vermont. Okay, Montpelier will be in Totality, but it's not going to experience it for very long. So as you start going a little bit further, okay, towards that center line, towards Plattsburgh, you have a little bit longer to experience Totality. I believe it's going to be a little over 3 minutes on the central line there. Even 2 minutes. In 2017, I experienced a little over 2 minutes of Totality, and it was amazing. Definitely worth it. Oh, so I blew up and just really zoomed in because I know a lot of people are thinking about where do they want to go in Vermont or New York. New Hampshire, there's not a lot up in northern New Hampshire. So that might not be the best place to go. All right, so what will we experience here in Keene? So a lot of people are staying in Keene. We'll experience about 95% here. So it'd be cool to wear solar glasses. And this here was taken from a video from a website called timeanddate.com. And you can plug in your location and pick the annular eclipse and run it and see it. And this is the maximum right here. We're gonna have a sliver of the sun peeking out. So it's gonna stay pretty bright, get a little bit dimmer in the day. But in order to see this, you'll have to put your solar eclipse glasses on. You'll be able to see that it's a crescent up there. All right. So this picture was taken from the 2017 eclipse by the National Park Service. So one thing to think about, if you were going to go to the southwest to see the annular eclipse, at no point can you view that without protecting your eyes. You have to protect your eyes the entire time. Okay, there's going to be so much of the sun visible at every point at annular eclipse that it could cause eye damage. So if you wanted to view an annular eclipse, you need to make sure you keep those glasses on, or these people have little holders that they're viewers that they're holding up. So you cannot view that with your naked eyes. But Totality, in April, you're on that path. During that time, when the moon completely covers the sun, you can take your solar eclipse glasses off, and pretty amazing things happen. So let's talk about how to safely view an eclipse. All right, so, well, eclipses are kind of a long phase. A lot of us don't think about it. So when it first starts, they're like, hey, the moon is just starting to cover the sun. And you're like, yeah, no, it doesn't look any darker yet. Okay, but then you put your glasses on and you're like, hey, yeah, it is. So, okay, so once the eclipse starts, all the way on up, okay, until it's completely covered, you need to keep your glasses on. Those special solar eclipse glasses. During that Totality phase, okay, if you're with other people, they're like, okay, you can take your glasses off now. We had an MC at our event that we were at, so we all took our glasses off. And then somebody had a timer going, and they were like, oh, okay, it's ending, so everyone's gonna put their glasses back on. So just as that sun starts to emerge from behind the moon, we've got to put our glasses back on. So let's talk about what's safe to use. Okay. What's safe to use are these special viewers. Okay, and I have a little bit more information on those. You cannot use sunglasses. I'm ashamed to say, but my son like, hey, I'll leave you these viewers. He's like, no, I have to work. I'm not gonna be able to do it. So we didn't leave them for them. And he's like, oh yeah, so I had a few moments to go outside, and we like took 2 sunglasses and put them together. I was like, no. I was like, are your eyes okay? Do we need to go to the doctors? Okay, so you can't use sunglasses, even multiple sunglasses. They're gonna harm your eyes, cause a lot of damage. Right? The other thing is holding up your cell phone. Okay, you can't look at the sun through your cell phone. It's gonna damage your cell phone, damage your eyes. Same thing with cameras, binoculars, and telescopes. Okay. So if somebody's got a telescope, you need to say, do you have a filter on it? Is it safe? Okay, because we got to make sure that other people know what's going on too. So for people who are really into photography or into astronomy, okay, there are filters out there that you can buy. They're called solar filters. There's a number of different brands out there that are safe. And so you need to do a little bit of research. There's Batter and AstroZap. But they have to go on the outer lens. Okay, that's between that lens and the sun. That filter isn't going to go on the side where your eye is going to go. Okay, so if you see somebody and they have a setup, they should have some sort of film over their camera or even your cell phone. And the other thing is you can't take your glasses and put it over your camera on your cell phone. Okay, you might still damage your camera. So I'd make sure you get a special filter designed for your camera, for your cell phone. Okay, so there's a number of different suppliers for solar eclipse glasses. And I understand from the 2017, some companies were trying to make money and had glasses that weren't protecting your eyes the way they should have. So if you buy glasses, they should have this ISO certification on them. So on the inside glass, when you look at your glasses, okay, it should have a little ISO stamp and it should say that it meets the requirements. And I actually have a list of vendors that have been approved for glasses, and I have that to give you so you can scan the QR code and make sure you get glasses that are going to protect your eyes. All right, so just going on. I know some people have looked at solar eclipses using welder shields or glasses, and those glasses shields are additive. So if you have a 10 and a 4, you can put them together. You have, I don't know if a 4 exists, but you can use welders glasses if they're rated at 14. Otherwise, there's a little too much UV rays that are getting through and you can damage your eyes. Cameras, telescopes, binoculars can be covered with solar filters. So there's a picture of a little telescope. It's got a little solar filter fitted on the end. And that is the side that's going to be towards the sun, okay, to filter out those harmful rays. But there's also a bunch of other things you can do to look at the sun. So as I mentioned, when an eclipse happens, it takes a while. So when the 2017 one, it was about an hour and a half from when it started until when the moon fully covered the sun. So there's a lot of time in there to kind of play around with stuff and experiment. So I'm definitely going to put together a little box of things to experiment with, you know, during that hour and a half before and that hour and a half afterwards to play with to see what I can see. So gather up anything you can find that's got small holes in it. So colanders, slotted spoons, punch holes in paper. I think you mentioned you had some holes in your tarp.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is the sun, it's so far away, as it passes through these small holes. Yeah, I could go into a whole thing on ray diagrams for physics here, but what you're going to see is the actual shape of the sun. So over here on the right, we see all these little crescent suns filtering through actually leaves on a tree. Okay, each of those little spaces. Here, they've taken their hands and they've just meshed them together to make small holes to get the little shapes of the sun on the ground. Pretty cool stuff. Another way is if you're at a school, they might, or some event, they might borrow some of these. Schools tend to have these, they're called sun spotters. So you can see the sun, you can actually see the sunspots on the sun, it's pretty active right now. Or there's some great videos out there that NASA's put out of how to make a pinhole camera. All you need is like a shoebox or a cereal box, or Amazon box, and a little bit of aluminum foil and some tape. And when you set up your pinhole camera, when you use it, you put your back to the sun, you look through one end, and the sunlight is coming in the other hole, and you see it projected on the far side of your box. So there's some cool things that you can do to experiment with. Have a good time trying to visualize the sun, because I'm gonna be honest, sitting there for an hour and a half with your glasses on, staring at the sun, we kind of didn't do it. Like, we put our glasses on and we looked, and then we talked, and then we, put our glasses back on and looked again. The other thing is, like, when you look at the sun, okay, we all know we're not supposed to look at the sun. So when you put your glasses on, what you need to do is not look at the sun, and you put your glasses on, and this is kind of common sense. Put your glasses on, turn around, look at the sun. These glasses are black, like you can't see anything. But then when you turn in the general direction of the sun to see it, to look at it, you're done, turn back away and take your glasses off. So that you don't take your glasses off and be like, oh, the sun's there. Okay, so we want to be safe, protect our eyes. Okay, so as I mentioned, during this entire time, about an hour and a half leading up to the total eclipse, we need to have our glasses on if we're looking at the sun. Okay, you can take a break and play with some other things to try and see what the shape of the sun is. Okay, by having it go through all these little holes, it'd be pretty cool. But at totality, we can take our glasses off. Got to be careful though. We can only take our glasses off if we're in that path, that gray band on the map, where the moon shadow is going to fall on the earth. So if you're at 99%, you can't take your glasses off. Right, 99%, the experience is different. It's still just a partial. I think here on the picture, we can see something very different is happening here. So at 99%, we're seeing a thin crescent of the sun. And at 100%, we're seeing this glowing aura that looks like around the moon. At 100%, you can take those glasses off, and that is actually what you're going to see. That's okay to view without the glasses on. This here, this is the corona of the sun that we're seeing. It's the outer atmosphere of the sun, not the surface. Okay. The light is not as strong. It's not going to hurt our eyes. But the only time we can look at the eclipse during totality, that 100%. But there's some pretty cool things that happen prior to totality. So, like I said, you kind of sit there for about 90 minutes. There's not a lot going on. We were kind of playing with some different things where we were at in Wyoming. But those last few moments before totality, a couple of things happen that are pretty spectacular. And they happen again just as totality is ending. So there's these two things. One's called Bailey's beads, and it's named after a guy. Okay, so long time ago. So just as the moon is almost completely eclipsing the sun, the moon isn't completely smooth. It has valleys and mountains. And what happens is as it's starting to completely eclipse the sun is peeking through those valleys on the moon. And we get something called Bailey's beads. They look like a little line of beads. So I like the picture over here on the left, because we see like these broken beads that are forming. And those are the lunar valleys. So a lot of times you see this just as the totality is happening, and then you see it again as it's ending. Both times we get something else. It's called the diamond ring effect. You can see that in the picture here. It's sort of like this bright glowy area. Okay, the diamond ring, like wearing a diamond ring. Okay, so here and here. A lot of times we don't see that quite as much as totality is starting, because there's so much of the sun and there's not as much. So we miss that sort of flare from the diamond ring. But it's there. It's easier to see it as the sun is emerging, because we get a few beads and then suddenly it flares out into this really bright diamond ring. Okay, so we get the Bailey's beads a lot of times as it's emerging, and then this really bright flare as the sun is really emerging. Here. And has, whoops, did I trip over my board? Sorry. Also, during totality, you might see solar prominences. So little red bits, okay, around the moon. These are actually from the sun. So the red protrusions from the sun. Prominence might be visible during totality.
Susan?
Yes.
Yeah, during when Bailey's beads and the diamond ring, you need your solar glasses on, is that correct?
So probably supposed to say yes. You should always have your glasses on when you are viewing the sun. But I think if you do some of the reading, there's just a little bit of light that is coming through, and for that brief moment that you see those Bailey's beads, okay, that it's not going to cause permanent damage. It very, very quickly. It's sort of like totality is just ending. You start seeing these little peaks of the sun. You're kind of like getting your eclipse glasses ready to put on your face. So you catch a little bit of it by naked eye before you get your eclipse glasses on, was my experience.
All right.
It's very quick. I'm not saying that's how you should view it, but that is how I experienced it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I did read that probably for that brief amount of time, there'd be no long-lasting damage. But at the same time, they put a caveat in there that you should always wear your glasses when the sun is visible. Okay, I like this picture because there's a couple of solar prominences that we can see here around the diamond ring. So all those red sort of flares are pretty cool. And then just a nice picture of the corona of the sun. And I actually have some pictures that are very bad that I took on my cell phone in totality, so that I can show you that unless you're really into astrophotography, probably, there's no point in doing it except to say that, hey, I took this, but it's nothing you're going to hang on the wall. So during totality, some really cool things happen. So the temperature drops. You are in the moon's shadow. If you're on a hill, you can see the moon's shadow coming towards you. And then suddenly you're in it. Okay. And the sun is dark. You see this glowing aura, the corona of the sun, around this black spot that's the moon. You can sort of see that up here. And everywhere you look, is twilight. So 360 degrees, everywhere you turn is twilight. And I actually got cold. So picture this, it's August, Wyoming, it's hot, it's like 80. Suddenly there's a wind. Okay, everything is dark. It's like 60 degrees, it's like drop 15 degrees. And the animals change. So in the daytime, think about all those animal sounds that we hear. We hear the birds, we hear the insects, and then suddenly it's night. And the birds, no song. Okay, the insects that you heard during the daytime, they're gone. You might hear some crickets, those things you hear at nighttime start going. What was really cool in Wyoming was the building. They had a set of, they had a number of nesting nighthawks on the roof of the building. They like flat roofs. And so when night descended from the eclipse, suddenly there was about a dozen nighthawks that were swooping out over the crowd of people. And it was pretty funny because everyone starts going, oh my gosh, bats, bats. I'm like, those are nighthawks, those are birds. So really cool because they thought it was nighttime. So pretty neat. So, artificial night in the middle of the day. And this only happens during totality. So this screen is pretty cool. If we have a good sky, okay, we don't have clouds, we're able to see totality, it's going to be pretty amazing. We have the possibility of seeing a number of planets. We've got Jupiter is going to be really bright. Venus is normally really bright. So I could just barely see Venus. Actually was out for the 2017 eclipse. But here we're going to have Jupiter and Venus. If you're good, you might be able to see Saturn and Mars. But we're also going to have a comet. That's pretty cool, right? So I'm really looking forward to this. I can't wait. So this picture here was made by Sky Safari, which is a program that you can use to look at the night sky and what will it look like at a future point. So pretty cool. All right, and there's some other phenomenon. This one I didn't know about. My brother-in-law told me about it. Okay, it was shadow bands. So during totality, well, actually I skipped one, I apologize. I'll come back to shadows. There's something called shadow bands. If you lay out like a white sheet, or you have a solid color like paper or something that you put down, you start seeing these wavy bands of light as totality is approaching. So just before and just after totality, you'll see these wavy bands. There's a couple of videos out online that you type in shadow bands. I saw one of a car, white car, and you can see these shadow bands. NASA's not quite sure what caused it, but they think it's the same thing that causes stars to twinkle. Okay, so it's about the atmosphere effect. What's really cool is shadows become sharper, and I noticed this. Like the shadows are really crisp because the light is coming only from one direction. Because normally light is being scattered in our atmosphere. So just before totality, look at your shadow, it looks really different than what it normally looks like. That's pretty cool. Okay, so NASA, I believe this is a NASA program. Could be wrong there, I apologize. So there's a program, it's a citizen science program. It's called the GLOBE program. And you can download this onto your cell phone if you want to. I'm sure you can probably do this online as well. And on the eclipse days, they open up a new section that's just for eclipses. And they're looking at what's the cloud cover, what's the temperature, what do you observe? So they're looking to collect data from the everyday person, okay, about the eclipse. And my understanding is you don't need to be in totality to be part of this. So everyone can do this on the 14th of October and also again on April 8th. speaking of apps, I have two apps that are apps about the eclipse. This one here is called Totality. It's free. There's no ads, which is pretty awesome. Okay, I hate those ads. I don't know about you, right? And it shows you what you will see at your location. So you can put your location in, it's going to show you, it's got interactive maps. I think it will tell you where to drive to experience totality, like the closest place to where you're at. It has information about eclipses and how to view them safely. So this is pretty cool. There was another one that was put together by the Exploratorium. So if you go to the exploratorium.com, they have a free app as well. It has almost all the pictures of the Exploratorium, the information that they have, which is in their resources, available with similar features to the other app. And then last, I have a QR code that you can scan with your phone. I have a URL. I have handouts of these, so you can take these home to get to where to buy glasses safely, filters for telescopes, as well as these last two apps if you want to get those on your phone to check them out. So I guess I should have asked for questions earlier. I apologize.
I do have a question. When you were talking about shadow bands,
Yeah,
is that phenomenon only if you're in the path of totality, or you said Keene's gonna get like 95%? Would we still see that effect at all, or are you not sure?
I'm gonna say I'm not sure, but probably not.
Okay.
Okay. But definitely have lots of fun doing some other things.
Yeah.
The shape of the sun and the moon.
Kind of data that they collect. There was, you said the NASA,
The globe.
yeah, the globe. You know what they're looking for?
That's a great question. I didn't use it in 2017. I know you can go ahead and you can like download and look at the data that everybody's put in, but
Yeah.
I personally haven't used it yet. That's a great question. I think there's samples out there that you can look at.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Any questions from Zoom?
Thank you.
No, okay.
Hey, Susan,
Yeah, Bob.
yeah, I was just, if you could kind of go over again about you mentioned about the moon not going around the earth. Is that, did I understand that, or I didn't quite follow that?
Yeah, so I apologize. I did go kind of fast. It's kind of like a fun thing to throw out there. And wow, that's not the way we expect things to happen. So let me see. Let me go back. Just gonna pull it up here.
Okay,
Yeah, my students have a hard time getting their mind around this one.
yeah,
And I did too, because I'm gonna be honest, I was sitting in a sort of a Zoom meeting with NASA. And one of the people there from NASA said, well, the moon just perturbs the Earth's orbit. And I was like, wait, what? The moon doesn't go around the Earth. And so then I went off to look at this. So I think the best way to think of this is first get in your mind the Earth going around the sun.
hmm,
And then we need to add on to that layer. I don't know if you can see the picture here.
yep,
But the picture shows all the way on the right, we've got the moon is sort of like below the Earth on the picture.
yeah,
Okay, and
Yep.
then as we move to the left, the moon is behind the Earth.
Yep.
So they both make forward progress as they go around the sun. So they're moving in the same direction together around the sun. And then the last picture I have on here, the moon is above the Earth. And at no point has the moon moved backwards in its orbit around the sun. It's always making forward progress around the sun.
Mhm.
So it never actually loops the Earth because the Earth has moved forward in its orbit around the sun as well,
I say,
which is unique in our solar system. There's no other Earth moon system that move like this. The other moons actually loop their planet and go backwards in their orbit around the sun, whereas our moon is always making forward progress in its orbit around the sun. And these two little ones are going to confuse their teachers on tomorrow, I think.
So it almost sounds like the moon is also orbiting the sun instead of just the Earth.
So we're,
Kind of.
I find it's easier to think of we're both traveling around the sun together,
Yeah,
and they weave back and forth
yeah.
about a point that's inside the Earth, but they're always both traveling. So they both travel counterclockwise around the sun. The moon never goes backwards, always forward in that orbit, which is kind of interesting.
yeah. Thank you.
You know, it's not the way we think of it at all. We think of it looping like this as the Earth is going around. It's not. It's bizarre. That just like the middle of the Zoom I was in, I was just like, stop, I can't even think about anything else now. So. Yeah,
Could I add to one of your answers?
sure.
We have used the Globe Observer app for some of our programs here at the library. We've done like cloud cover was one of them where you can take pictures of the sky, submit your location, and then provide the data. But I'm looking at the app right now, and it looks like for a limited time before the eclipse, you can submit temperature data, which is building off of what you said about the change in temperature. So there's a couple of different things that you can go on there and see what data you can submit.
Yeah, so I think on the Globe at night, sorry, the Globe Observer. I think if you do it, they're hoping you can get like temperature and cloud cover data the day before. If possible.
Yeah, this one specific, this is their Globe Eclipse data page.
Okay, but I think from the location, they were hoping you could do data the day before,
Let me see.
from the limited amount I've read about it.
I might have to read more. I'm not sure if I'm seeing that, but
Okay,
I'm on the website too. I'm not on the app.
I haven't downloaded the app, so
I thought it was
not
on-
yet. Other questions? Yeah,
The 5-degree tilt, is that exaggerated on the slide that you showed?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more than 5 degrees, so, but yeah, most of these I put not to scale. But some of them I just didn't get to. I think I can go back to the end of this so people can look at the QR code. Let's see. I'm not used to this particular,
So I have a question.
yeah,
When will we have a total eclipse here, you know?
that's a great question. The next continental one isn't until I think 2046.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, right.
And I don't think that goes through New England either. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do they have maps that show into the future like that, where they're predicted to be?
Yes.
And where would we find those?
Oh, so I could, well, I'm not connected. So what I would do is I would probably type in NASA and solar eclipse and then predictions.
Okay.
And they actually know where they're going to occur, and you'll see a lot of them happen over the ocean. So typically there's about 2 a year, but they're just over the ocean,
somewhere, maybe.
or, Canada, way up in Canada, or, not places where we can readily get to. So I'm already eyeing up 2026 Spain for the next eclipse that looks like it's gonna be making some decent landfall. Yeah. I'm gonna brush up on some Spanish. Wow, thank you, everyone. Happy to continue to answer questions.
I actually do have one question.
Yeah.
So is the difference, maybe this is super elementary, between solar eclipse and lunar eclipse?
Yeah.
I wouldn't actually know.
Okay.
I just hear them, it feels like they're used interchangeably. I know they're not, but what's the actual difference?
It depends on what you're looking at. So when you're looking at the sun, it's a solar eclipse because the moon is passing between you and the sun.
Yeah.
But when it's the sun, the earth, and we're looking at the moon, it's the earth's shadow is on the moon.
Oh, okay.
And the earth is much bigger. And so,
Gotcha.
we really eclipse the moon for a long period of time. And that also allows people from a much bigger geographic area to see the lunar eclipse. So a lot of times it's like, hey, everybody in the Northeast and, halfway down the coast, East Coast can all see the lunar eclipse tonight, sort of thing. Whereas the solar eclipse, that moon shadow is so small on the Earth's surface, and it's moving like extremely fast. We're talking about like 1,000 miles per hour. So it's really fast. Yeah, great question though.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks. You're welcome.